Okay, so you've been flying FPV with your digital goggles on and you want to share with a bystander how wonderful it is to see where you're flying clearly. You've tried, like I have, the DigiView on your phone, and I could not get it to work reliably. In fact, I couldn't get it to work at all. I tried every different cable I could. So I've gone a different route, and that is to use a Raspberry Pi. This is a Raspberry Pi 3, but I initially used the Raspberry Pi 4, but since I have a Raspberry Pi 3, why not use that? So standard Raspberry Pi 3, you need DigiView on a SD card. I'll put a link in the description of this video where to get that image, and all you have to do is use the Raspberry Pi image writer to put it on the card. It will self-boot and it will run. You don't have to do any Linux or know anything about Raspberry Pi. Then on top you need, this is the official Raspberry Pi 7-inch screen, and it comes with the digital connector ready to mount a Raspberry Pi on the back of. The connections you need are a ribbon cable which goes in here, and you push it in, and then you push these two little clips down to hold it in place. That's always a little bit fiddly. So that will connect the screen to the Raspberry Pi using this connector. It already comes with 4 standoffs and the screws, so we just screw that down. So mounted on the back, pull up the little connector here, slot in the edge connector. This is the fiddliest bit of the whole thing, putting this edge connector in on both ends. Everything else is a doddle. So that's it in, and we're going to fold that over like that. Then you get it comes with the jumper cables, the screen, and you need to supply it power. It's already got the data through there. So the edge connector, this is supplying power from the Pi initially to the screen. So we jump into the Pi's power connectors, which is, it gives you the information with the screen which ones to connect to. It's the first and the third connector along the bottom here, positive on the right, and then on the edge connector at the bottom here, it's again the same thing. On the outside of the left one is the negative, and the outside on the right one is positive. Can you see that? Let me zoom in on that bit just so you can see what I'm pointing to. Okay, and that's great. That will work fine just as it is. That's all you need. Then obviously you'd need to supply it power in here, and a USB lead into one of these USB sockets into your DJI goggles. But I thought that was, well, it's great, it works, I tested it, but I thought I could do better. So I bought myself a Raspberry Pi case, about £12. Comes with a back that clips on. Now this is for the Raspberry Pi 4, and it doesn't fit the Pi quite right.
I don't know that.
It doesn't fit the Raspberry Pi 3 quite right, so I had to cut off this standoff because that will block against that. And the other thing is the Raspberry Pi 4 has 2 micro HDMIs here. This has one ordinary HDMI. So all I've done is just widened up that slot should I want to use the HDMI. So that fits on here. And I also thought, well, I want to be able to power this with external power sources. So I fitted a 12 volt So is it a 12 volt? Yes, 12 volts. No, 5 volts, 3 amp BEC there, which is connected to a socket I drilled on the side. So that's a standard socket that you get on most headsets, most goggles. So that's the same size as that. So that's wired into this, and the output is on these. So that can go over the back of this, and it goes quite neatly once you've tucked the cables in. Like that. That fits over the top. Let me just make certain these cables are out of the way for the moment. That will fit over the top of this, and you just pop that into the case so it makes a really nice front and protective front. That screws in with the 4 screws that come provided with the case. So there's nothing extras you need to buy here apart from that 5 volt regulator if you want to go the route I have. And then the power cables from the BEC, the first 2 of these pins on the Raspberry Pi are ganged together. So I'll put the positive onto that one. Oops, if I can do it. Yep. And then there's a ground pin further down here. And what you have to do is between this ground pin, there's 3 that are signal, and then the 4th one is a ground. So we'll just plug that into there. And I'll just show you that close up. So first 2 are the power, and then it's ground, 3 blank spaces, and then another ground. So we've got power coming from this into the Raspberry Pi, and the Raspberry Pi providing power to the screen. That's all the connections you need to do on that side. Then the back cover pops on, and that's the unit all ready to go. Now what I've done is I happen to have a couple of these eSheen 18650 cases. So basically this holds 2 18650s, gives you a charger, gives you a charger on the back for USB. That's got 2 power, and I put a bit of lock, you know, Velcro. This is the 3M lock and lock, so that can go there, and then I can just plug that in down here when I need to use it. And that turns on, and you'll be able to see that in a moment, hopefully. It'll take a little while just to boot up, if I've done everything right. There we are, DigiView getting ready. And once it's done that, getting ready, it's ready to plug into your monitor, into your goggles. And this, I think, although it's cost me a little bit of money, I think this is much nicer than handing somebody your phone on a cable. I mean, you don't want people running away with your phone anyway. So it does start quicker on a Raspberry Pi 4, but hey, why should I waste the Raspberry Pi 4 on it? There we go, it does a little blip of text up there, and that's it ready. To turn off, now Raspberry Pis don't like the power just whipped away from them. So turn off, you just hold your finger on the screen, because this is a touch screen, and choose the shutdown option in the middle. Are you sure they want to shut down? Yes. And just give it a few seconds to shut down before you pull the power cable out. And that's it. I think this is a great addition to anybody who's flying DJI on the goggles, and makes a really compact and nice unit for somebody else to look through. Works great.